Hi, I'm Austin Wintory, and I had the great pleasure of writing the music for this game, Erica. This is definitely the most technically ambitious score I've ever undertaken, so I thought I'd walk through just a single branching scene to show how it was all put together. You'll see here at the top of the screen is the game design map, which shows the different branches and options that the player has in real time. Below that is the score design map, showing how the music is laid out to interact with those decisions. Each box in the game design map is basically a single shot of footage in the game. Each box in the score design map is some component of the music, whether it's a short loop or a non-looping segment, stingers, and also layers which are coexisting at the same time and coming and going or remixing or whatever. It proved to be far more difficult than I was expecting, but hopefully the result is a more compelling game experience. Oh, and obviously spoiler warning. I kept it pretty clean, but still, you've been warned. The scene begins where we are returning to Erica's home. At the beginning of the game, we had to leave because of a police investigation there, and now the investigation has circled around and brought us back there. As soon as she opens the door and discovers it had already been unlocked, we begin in the kind of classic thriller or even horror tradition with some ominousness. Very simple, very straightforward. This is a short cue that just plays out straightforwardly. It then transitions into an infinitely looping cue. The player is then immediately confronted with a decision. You have to choose between picking up a picture frame or her torn up notebook on the floor. I had to make a cue that could infinitely loop, but to avoid it being too repetitive, it's designed where the little guitarlele, which is a kind of a hybrid of a ukulele and a guitar, plays for just the first few seconds and then disappears, and what's left behind are the suspenseful high strings. After a full repetition of the loop, the strings then disappear, and what's left behind is just the suspenseful underbelly. The idea is that if the player is moving very slowly, the cue can handle it, and if they move quickly, they never even hear the material loop. A short, linear, non-looping cue is then triggered based around the audio cue of hearing Blake, the police officer, investigating something across the hall. He smells death. This plays out almost like a cutscene within the moment. However, the player does have the ability to interact with the scene, revealing a flashback to an earlier moment at that same door. The player is now confronted with a major choice. Do you follow Blake into the apartment, or do you do as he said and stay behind in your own apartment? Choosing one or the other is going to result in totally different scores. Since the player has chosen to enter the other apartment, a short transition of high strings pivots us into the next cue. It's constructed based on two main elements. The top layer is a non-looping solo by my absolutely extraordinary partner in crime, Tina Guo. Once she finishes, her line will disappear, and what's left is this ominous, low bass ensemble recorded in Nashville. It's a little bit deceptive, but there is an enormous number of viable branches to what might happen in this scene. The player is offered immediately several choices. There is a door with the markings on it, and this distant area with the refrigerator. Those would have different implications for the music. The player chose the fridge. So, the music makes some subtle midstream modifications by bringing in new elements and also subtly reminding us of the solo cello that serves as kind of her embodiment within the score. The player chooses the photograph, and a single violin played by Caroline Campbell draws us in as if it's gravitationally pulling Erica towards the wall. Then, right on the cut, we deliver a flurry of saxophones, played by Ian Roller, over top a loop built around Tom Straley's guitarlele and some very subtle vocals of Oyanga Bold. Because it's a loose amount of time that the player can look through the peephole, after that initial flurry of saxophones, some more subtle, suspenseful music has to come in and hold position until Blake appears. Once he does, a delicious, nasty jump scare and then the scene will diverge yet again into multiple paths. If the player decides to go to the fridge, the cue will stay relatively suspenseful but dormant. However, we add new elements if we, as this player does here, go back to the peephole. A new element of kind of supersonically high cello harmonics come in, along with additional pulsing rhythms to help us track the danger that Blake might be walking into. If the scene goes on too long, there's even a bank of short phrases that can randomly trigger over the top of the rest to add a little tinge of chaos and fear. The result of which is that the music never is quite exactly the same, and instead always mutating just a little bit. The instant the phone starts to ring, we interrupt what's happening for a simple but stressful suspense cue. The solo violin calls yet again, like at the peephole, kind of like a siren beckoning her to the phone. Below that, the Nashville bass ensemble rumbles and churns away. The director, Jack Attridge, always wanted us to feel an empathy for this character of Erica, and one way to achieve that was making the world as dark and menacing as possible, so that we'd almost be crying out to try to protect her. The phone call here serves as a pivotal moment for Erica. What the actors are saying is crucial, so I stayed out of their way by limiting the music to mostly synths and high strings. By contrasting against the deep, rumbling quality of the rest of the score, the music is showing us this kind of tender and pleading desperation of a girl caught in the middle of something much larger than herself. For all the darkness of the game and score up to this point, it's nothing compared to what's waiting in the bathroom scene. As Erica starts to drift towards the door, the music is ratcheting up and getting into a sort of mad fury. The orchestra is screaming and wailing and crying out. It's as if it's begging Erica not to go in there. Until finally... Wait. You didn't actually think I was going to spoil this. I promise spoiler free, so we're not going to show what's in there. But needless to say, it's the culmination of all the choices Erica has made so far. Let's go back in time. So because this is a video game score and not a film score, we can ask the question, what if we had done something different? What if, instead of following him into the apartment, we had stayed in Erica's apartment? What if, instead of following Blake into the apartment across the hall, the player had chosen to stay in Erica's apartment? So here we are back at the Crossroads, the pivotal tilting point of the scene. We actually have a brief moment without music, and then, irresistibly, a little stinger jump scare. An adorable little British fox. As you can see, there's kind of a predestination where the player is going to be confronted with a ringing phone no matter which apartment they ultimately go into. But the details and nature of that call are going to vary based on what you decided not only here, but in the entire game leading up to this point. Again, you hear the violin introduce the ringing, and the groaning Nashville bass ensemble keeps up the tension below while the player decides what to do. There's a wide range of possibilities, and since I can't determine exactly how long the player will spend deciding, the music needs to be able to be either instantaneous or very slow in its reaction. As a composer, my goal is always to try and figure out how to write the music to best reflect the character's experience and the nature of what's going on in the story. It's not about obsessively chasing the mechanics, because answering the phone versus not has a major psychological implication for Erica. They have to be handled differently. Likewise, I can't predict how long the player is going to take to choose the dialogue option, so the music has to be designed to flexibly sustain that duration. Eventually, the revelation comes in, and you can see on the actress Holly Earl's face the trauma surfacing, and the cue begins to reach its conclusion. Blake comes in, and we've triggered an outro statement that fades as we go into the next scene. So there you have a scene that can be as short as 2 or 3 minutes, as long as 10 or more, and comprising 21 individually triggerable cues, about half of which are vertically stacked in order to remix in real time based on the player's choice. 21 cues bending over backwards to be able to achieve a second-by-second emotional accuracy to the player and to Erica's experience. Extrapolate that out to an almost 2-hour game and you can see why it became so technically complex. I've said it in many other places, but it's worth thanking my partner in crime, Adam Lidbetter at Sony, for his incredible work in supporting this level of technical complexity. And also the engineering and programming team at Flavourworks for supporting that level of music connectivity as well. Thanks for checking this out. I haven't made a video quite like this before. If you liked it and thought it was interesting, please let me know in the comments, or if you have any feedback of ways it might prove more informational or ways it might prove more useful, please don't hesitate to let me know. Thanks again for watching.